Now, you might not think this is world-breaking news, but it could absolutely destroy the auto industry here in North America, what Nissan is doing. Over at Automotive News, Nissan could pull next-generation Rogue production out of the United States. Production could go back to Japan. And a lot of you guys would be excited about that because Japanese build quality, you guys know, the drill at this point. But what if I told you it could ruin the livelihood of thousands of Americans here? Let's get into it. I believe the Rogue is the third best selling crossover here in the United States, behind the RAV4, behind the CR-V, and then you have the really well selling, the best selling vehicle for Nissan, the Rogue. Next generation Rogue production heading potentially out of the United States. And it's all because Nissan is trying to make money. All these companies are trying to make money, and they need cheaper parts. With the cost of inflation and everything that's going on, they need cheaper parts from their suppliers, and they're asking an average of 20% to up to 30% reduction in parts. And if they cannot get it, they are essentially blackmailing their suppliers, saying, hey, if we cannot get affordable parts in order for us to make money on our cars, we have to build them elsewhere for less money. And that would be Japan and potentially China. So let's get into this article, guys. Make sure you have your snacks and drinks. There's a lot of information here, and it is absolutely industry shattering if the Rogue heads out of the United States for production in so many ways. If you're new to the channel, my name's Kirk. I cover industry auto news. If you can't tell, I get pretty excited over it, whether it's good news or bad news. It's fun to talk about. If you like that sort of coverage and my enthusiasm, make sure to subscribe, and let's get into this. The Rogue is built in Smyrna, Tennessee, and in Kyushu, Japan. And I believe that the top Platinum Rogue is the only Rogue that's brought in from Japan and sold as the top of the line model here. I've reviewed the Platinum a couple times. And yes, the Platinum, I do remember with the J VIN number, it is made in Japan. The Rogue itself accounts for 1/3 of Nissan's sales in its largest market. Now, its largest market could have been China up to a few years ago, but we know that the Japanese automakers are essentially just free falling in China. It's not looking good for most of them. Toyota's kind of just staying afloat there at their current numbers, while Mitsubishi's completely gone, etc. There was a meeting in the headquarters of Franklin, Tennessee on January 11th, and the automaker told its suppliers it expects a significant reduction in the cost of parts for the 4th generation Rogue, scheduled to begin production in late 2026. Okay, so we're still about 2-3 years away from seeing this enter production. And Nissan asked suppliers for an average of 20% cut in parts pricing, and some suppliers up to 30%. The crazy thing is that this needs to happen because as it is right now, the Rogue is made for 20% less money over in Japan. If we look at the plant in Smyrna, Tennessee, they've already poured in over $7 billion into it. There's over 6,700 people that work there. The size of the plant is 6 million square feet. Annual capacity is 640,000 vehicles, which they're nowhere close to that production level. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The Nissan Leaf is produced there. The Nissan Leaf is leaving. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. The Murano is made there, the Pathfinder, the Rogue, and the QX60. That makes sense because the QX60 and the Pathfinder are very similar, right? The supplier said that Nissan told them that if they can't get closer to Japan's cost, they will move production to Kyushu. The Rogue at that Smyrna, Tennessee plant accounts for 40% of that factory's annual output, about 200,000 vehicles. Nissan sold 271,000 Rogues last year. The Leaf is ending production mid-2025 at the Smyrna, Tennessee plant. Apparently, it's going to be made in Great Britain, but it won't qualify for the EV tax credit. So it's in a tricky situation. Now, at the Canton, Mississippi plant, they are planning on bringing on 4 EVs, 2 sedans, one Nissan, one Infiniti, and the same thing for crossovers there. But that just got pushed back recently as well to late 2026, maybe 2027. It's a floating goalpost for sure. Now, here's the crazy thing. With the Rogue potentially moving to Japan, it would seemingly spell doom for that plant in Smyrna, Tennessee, and its nearly 7,000 employees, because it's currently only at, as well as the Canton, Mississippi plant, combined, they're only at 52% of their max capacity, and they need volume products to operate more profitably. And pushing the Rogue to Japan will add considerable red ink, also known as losing money, to Nissan here in the United States. Closing a plant could be in Nissan's future. I find that hard to believe just because so many products are made at that plant. Like the Pathfinder, they are committed to bringing a hybrid Murano in, I think, late 2025. And the QX60 isn't going to go anywhere as well. So it's really hard to imagine anything else being made there. I'm driving the Versa this week. The Versa, I think, is made in Mexico. Yeah, it's at the Aguas Calientes plant in Mexico. So if they close maybe the Smyrna, Tennessee plant, maybe all of the production would either move to Japan or that Mexico plant. It's hard to say. But you'll also have the Canton, Mississippi, but it seems like that's going to be mainly for the pickup, the Frontier, as well as EVs in the future. Okay, so here's the thing about China and production. In order to make room in Japan for the US production of the Rogue, Nissan could free up capacity at their southwestern Japan factory by moving some production to China. That doesn't mean Rogue production to China. It means moving some other vehicle that they sell in Japan to China to export into Japan or other countries as well. So don't think that the Rogue, we would be getting Chinese-made Rogues, which it could happen, but I doubt that would be the issue. Nissan not only is expecting the suppliers to lower prices 20 to 30%, but by the end of the week, they need to have those price quotes. So Nissan's getting the future of the Rogue and its production down pat probably here in the first quarter. If they can't get those prices down, they're just going to move it to Japan. It's insane. Daniel Russman, co-chair of the Global Automotive Practice at Butzel Long, has said, "I've never heard of an OEM asking for this magnitude of price reduction and threatening to move a whole vehicle production to another country." It's not only that, it's 40% of their capacity at that plant just gone in a snap. Anyways, Nissan could be concerned about the union organizing efforts increasing, and it's trying to find ways to cut their costs. That is something that the Detroit Big Three and the UAW, with that huge landmark successful negotiation of wages and I guess vacation and benefits and whatnot that happened recently, it's affecting all the automakers and their bottom line. They have to pay. It's good, right? It's good for the workers that they're getting paid more. But if these automakers are saying, okay, well, we can't afford to pay this much people this much money, they're going to reduce their workforce, and then they can also reduce their production costs by shipping cars elsewhere for production. It's just insane. Who would have thought that the Detroit Big Three and the UAW would have had this crazy of an impact so fast on the automakers here in North America that they want to send production elsewhere as soon as possible in order to just stay afloat. And another supplier said it is less expensive for Nissan to import the Rogue than it is for the company to build it here. One of the suppliers says, "We are not going to sell parts at a loss. We're not going to lose money. If that means we'll lose business and have to downsize, so be it." Steel is 20% cheaper in Japan. Labor is 50% lower in Japan. Also, the yen to dollar exchange is helping these Japanese automakers quite a bit. The dollar has surged more than 40% against the yen since 2020, making US built parts more expensive than those produced in Japan. So in 2019, before the pandemic, suppliers' profit margins were about 1 to 2% points higher than automakers. And in the third quarter of 2023, automakers had an average profit margin of 8.9%, 3 percentage points higher than the automotive suppliers' margins. And the suppliers in 5 years have gone from 8.1% in profits to 4.7% in 2022. One expert says there's no way any supplier could reduce its cost by 20%. There'd be no margin left and they'd be selling at a loss. So that's, I feel like the quote to end this on. I would say it's about 99% certain that the Rogue goes to Japan for production. All 200,000+ of those Rogues go to Japan for production and are exported to the United States. Nissan just can't make money, seemingly, or enough money to pay people here to produce them. But what does that also mean for the rest of the vehicles at the Smyrna, Tennessee plant? I have no clue. And will this have shockwaves across the industry, because the smaller suppliers could be absolutely wiped out from something like this. And if that's the case, maybe they can't also supply parts to other automakers' cars. So you could have this crazy domino effect going on with the Rogue leaving the United States. And we could see a mass exodus, let's say, of Japanese automakers, worst case scenario, right? Abandoning their production here in North America to some extent and importing them into America. I highly doubt that would happen. Now, it could happen with Subaru. Subaru would be one where I feel like it can happen the quickest, because yes, they have a plant, I believe, in Indiana, but they do import a lot of vehicles there. And they have said in recent history, I think it was last year, it's like they can't even keep up with local McDonald's and other fast food chains to pay their employees competitive wages. So things aren't looking good from that perspective. They could just import all of the Subarus other than the battery electric ones that are made by Toyota. Could we see more Toyotas be made from Japan? And the answer is yes. We have reports coming in that the Sienna is going to Japan for its next generation. Crazy to me, but they have to shore up production volume for EVs here in North America to qualify for the EV tax credit, to get tax benefits as well from the US government or the Canadian government as well. But with such a, Toyota has so many plants here in North America. They build the Corolla sedan in Mississippi. They build their pickup trucks in Sequoia and San Antonio. They build, their largest plant in the world is in Kentucky. They have plants Ontario where they build Lexus and RAV4s. So Honda, there's no way they could ship production of any of their cars to Japan. In fact, the opposite is happening. All their cars are being built in North America going forward, essentially, and being exported to Japan. If we look at their EVs, their Zero Series as well as their Afeela EV with Sony, built here in North America, then exported globally. So Honda is setting up shop as their stronghold here in North America, which comes with its pros and cons, right? They can't really, they've been closing, they closed their mother plant, I forget what it's called at this point, a few years back in Japan, Honda did. So interesting times in the auto industry with rising costs and shifting sands, especially with EVs adding fuel to the fire for all of this very quick shifting news. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I can't wait to see what kind of positive and negative implications this will have on the auto industry here in North America. And at the very worst, it could get really, really bad and have a domino effect. But I don't think that, I don't want to think about that too much. I want to stay positive. Hopefully that plant doesn't close and most of those people can keep their jobs. But signing off, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.